Here's the real question. Can people hear me? Do 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 do. Let's see, I need to pop this chat out and I don't remember how. Live chat. Done with that. Could have sworn there was a way to pop chat out. Oh, there it is. Pop out chat. Let's see. Hopefully I'm hearable. Otherwise I'm going to be talking to myself a lot. Well, let's go ahead and paint and see what happens. I have the most delicious Christmas cookies right now. It's very hard not to just eat them. Look what else I got for Christmas. Woo! Isn't that awesome? Okay. Done with the Christmas babble. Let's paint. It's time to dive back into the wonderful world of painting. Which is a little bit difficult to do because I have Crockpot in my lap. He is not being very cooperative today. But we will make it work. Just gonna go ahead and get that part wet. I've explained what I'm doing on this so many times and I don't know if I should repeat myself or what to fill in the space here. I don't want to bore people by saying over and over again, you use this color, then this color, then that color. But I also know this is a new stream today. Yeah, well. Just finishing up the background on this lady. Since I got so far the other day, seems a shame not to just go the rest of the way and get this background all done. I'm looking at different options for music that I can play while I'm streaming, but so far the only options are some free-to-play music that is, well, there's your reason it's free to play. Not that I'm a music snob or anything, but I definitely prefer to have a bit more going on than what was being offered there. Looks like I missed this little spot when I was doing this background last time. When I start doing the 1-hour classes, it'll be a lot faster, obviously, because it's only going to be an hour. I won't be doing all of these fiddling little details. I'll be starting with a basic beginner's watercolor class and just kind of go from there. This is more for people who have a basic idea how to watercolor, but are trying to branch out in what they know. I love watching the water move on its own, and the pigments just kind of roll where they need to go. I think that's one of the reasons why I like watercoloring so much. It's just because a lot of it is just letting it do its own thing and enjoying what comes of that. Can say painting little areas like that does make me super nervous. I keep thinking what's going to happen if I accidentally put a big old blob of red right across where I need white to be. But with all things, you just gotta kind of go with the flow. And if that means you end up with some weird section that you have to do something fancy with, well, that's what happens. I really do love this shadowy violet. It's such a nice color. Need a bit more of a blue purple in here. Paintings usually don't make a whole hell of a lot of sense when they're in this stage. Oh gosh, Crockpot is stretching and he nearly fell out of my lap. Oof. Hi, Crockpot. I wish I could pan the camera over so you guys could see, but I'm gonna move a little bit fast with this. I don't know if you can hear, my phone is just buzzing away today. I've had so many messages, mostly friends and family, celebrating the holidays. I have quite a broad spectrum of friends who celebrate many, many different holidays this time of year. It's one of the reasons why we're not too particular about when we celebrate in our family, because it's all just one big long party in December, at least for us. Okay. Getting some good textury stuff back here. Sorry, I'm still getting accustomed to this camera, so I'm not quite sure when I move off of the camera screen. Now, I don't know if you remember from last week, but we're trying to keep this area as the lightest area. Just going to be a little bit tricky to make it somewhat even, but we will make it happen. And last time I bitched quite a bit about what an awful color this is. It's a light umber with a bit of sepia mixed in. Just a terrible, terrible color. And yet it blends so nicely with so many things. It's kind of frustrating for me. And then we're doing a bit of yellow in here. Trying to give it that nice light. Coming back in with our reds. And our purples. Purple is really where the darks come into play, so we have to be a bit careful when we spread in those tones. And then of course purple and yellow make brown, so it's very easy to get the wrong color mixed in. But I feel pretty good about where this one is going. You can see the board is a bit creased right here. That's because my dog Buddy got super excited and came running in and knocked it over and then stepped on it. But I wasn't too worried because I knew I was going to be doing a very dark background here, and the crease would only create more texture for me to work with. So, you know, sometimes you just gotta go with what happens, not stress out thinking things are ruined forever because it got stepped on or it got bent. Yeah, these things can be fixed. It just takes a little time, a little patience. Little of this, little of that. Well, I don't like how light over here is, so I'm gonna darken this area. Originally I really liked it because it had such a nice light purple in it, but now I feel like it's just a bit too bright for what I'm going for. So I'm just gonna give it a bit more color, darken it up a bit more. Yeah, I feel pretty good about that. Crockpot is in my lap and he keeps sliding down off my lap because he just wants to sleep here while I'm painting. Let's see if I can get the camera to move over. Let's see. There he is, sound asleep. Sorry about the boob shot. I'm doing the pajama thing today. But Crockpot is doing the sleep here and cuddle thing. Okay. So we've got the bulk of the background in. I really like where it's going. I like how the lighting looks now that this is all darkened in, but we still have this wing to finish. And we also have some little tiny areas like right here and right. Whoop. Always watch your brush for droplets of water. They will run down your brush into the bristle and can create blobs, so you always want to be super aware of just how wet your brush is so that you can stop it before you get an unexpected blob of paint, or you don't want an unexpected blob of paint. Okay, doing pretty good here. Get into the tiny details. Whoop. I'm gonna have to let that dry a little bit, I think, because I brought it too close to the edge here. Let's just see what happens. I'm in one of those moods where I just kind of want to see what happens when I do things. It's not too bad. The guy who taught me how to watercolor is Mike Trinkenberg. He would always tell me to just relax, not worry too much about what's happening. You need to be thinking about what you want to happen and actively working towards that, but don't stress out if it doesn't go exactly the way you planned, because maybe it's going the way it was supposed to go. Okay, let's work on creating this space of light here. With watercolors, it is always easier to work light to dark. Now granted, right now I'm working all my darks in on my background, but for this we're going to work light to dark, and I'm going to put in all of my lights in first. Really try to get this area nice and bright. Now the faster you work, the easier it is to get good even placement of colors when you're doing something like this, because you can skip through entire sections. But you don't have to work crazy super fast. It just makes it a bit easier if you do. You can see where the paint has dried here because it's not blending on its own. So we're going to have to go back with water and soften up these edges. Definitely don't want any hard edges happening in these lit areas. Okay, now that I've got the framework for my light, I'm going to start working on my darks. When I get to the light areas, I go back and I just use water, and I'm pushing the dark away so that it has some nice blending happening, but it keeps this area nice and bright the way I want it. This isn't the only way to handle light and dark, but it's the way that seems to work the best for me. I tend to be a little chaotic when I use my paints, so this at least helps keep me from going too overboard with things. Just going back in with my purple, darkening things up a bit over here. I haven't used any orange here, but it has kind of orange tones because of the yellows and the yellowy browns interacting with the red. When I use just the water and I push the red back, I'm forcing a blend that creates the illusion of there having been orange here. When you look up close, there's actually zero orange even with the blending of the colors, but your eye insists that there has to be. because red doesn't go into yellow without it going orange. But it's all browns. I figured that I should probably finish this holiday picture, you know, before the holiday's over. Always a good idea. I've always been a bit sluggish with getting my holiday artwork done in time for the various seasons. And it's just because, you know, I don't want to start the Christmas music playing too early or any of that. And I like being able to share what I'm working on while I'm working on it. But in order to get things done in time for the holidays, I have to start them before Halloween even happens. That is usually not okay. Get a lot of people protesting that Halloween's not even over yet. One of these days I'll get the timing down to where I'm releasing things at the right time, but working on them earlier. However, this year is not that year. Really liking where she's going. I wasn't sure about this one when I started it because I couldn't settle on a time period for her clothing. I wanted her to feel very much like Yule and Christmas and just all of these holidays that happen at this time of year. But then I got this incredible urge to do 18th century French aristocratic clothing, and yeah, that doesn't blend very well with Yule or Hanukkah. So, you know, I ended up just kind of giving up with trying to do something traditional for the season and just going with the elements that I liked. It's got a little bit of colonial American clothing, a little bit of French clothing, a little bit of English clothing, all around the 17th century though. And then of course the wings and the use of holly berries, that's all Yule. I don't really have a good representation of Hanukkah, unfortunately. So perhaps I'll do that for next year's holiday piece. I have quite a few really beloved people to me who are Jewish, and I think it'd be really nice to do something for them next year for the holidays instead of my usual chaotic blend of, I don't know, it's festive. Do, do, do. I am fond of this one though. I got this beautiful frame at an antique shop that I just fell in love with, and I wanted to do something special to go in it. And I feel like this fits what I wanted to see happen with that frame. Bringing this red around. While the pigments are wet, you can really pull and push them around to do different effects. When I was studying, Mike would hand me stacks of illustration board cut in little Sometimes they were 4" by 4" squares, sometimes they were 5" by 5", but they weren't very large, just in little squares. And he'd send me home with them and say, Jessica, bring all of these back filled. And he didn't mean with art, he meant with textures, with playing with the watercolor and seeing what it does when you just let it go. And that was probably one of the most invaluable experiences I had, was learning to just play with the water, push and pull the paints, move them around. It really made my light spot a lot smaller than I thought I would, but I think I like it that way. Which means we have to darken up this area right here, but that's okay. You know, we roll with whatever ends up happening. This is why I don't plan a whole lot of my paintings, because sometimes they just take a life of their own and they don't want to follow our plan. That's okay. Just giving this a little bit more color to work with. It's a little bit too bland for my tastes. Always be aware of where your hand is resting. It would be really easy to lay your hand on a piece of wet and lift all the pigment off of that section only to put it down in another section. I have done that many times. It has been a horrible experience every time. It's so funny because I say, you know, whatever it's meant to be, don't stress, and then I say, oh, this was awful. But you don't stress as much if you don't have to adjust your plans to account for things that you could have prevented, such as your hand resting on a wet area. There was an artist who did a beautiful album cover back in the, let's say it was in the 70s. And it had this amazing light blue wash. So he made the blue sky that was perfectly even. It looked like he just rolled a sheet of blue across the page. You couldn't see brush strokes or anything. And while it was drying, his cat walked across it. And so he came back to little paw prints straight across this perfect blue that he had spent a ridiculous amount of time getting even. And what he did is he had to go back. He didn't want to repaint the whole thing. So he went back and with the tiniest spotter brush repaired every single paw print with tiny, tiny, tiny droplets of paint to match the smoothness that he originally had until he painted out the paw prints. And that is some incredible work. And he, you know, he fixed it, but that was a lot of time he didn't have to spend repainting his background. Watercolors are amazingly flexible. That's one of the things I like about them. You can do so many different effects with watercolors. Should probably put this to where I can see if anyone talks to me, but I keep getting so focused on this painting. See, my water has gotten super dirty. It's not even pretending to be clear anymore. This is just red, which is okay because we're still working on this background. And I really like where this background is going. Very excited. It's almost done, so I can move on to other areas. There's a lot of different neat things I want to show you guys. But there we Gotta do the tedious parts first. So really, this is actually a really fun part to do, just because I like watching the paints roll around on their own. So used to painting with music, it feels weird to not paint with music. Hopefully I'll be able to resolve things soon and have some nice background sound to paint to. Till then, I will just ramble. Yeah, one thing, you may notice that I haven't really erased any lines on my drawing very much. I have a lot of lines kind of zigzagging and crisscrossing all over the place. I draw with a 0.03 millimeter pencil. They're not a standard size, so you won't be able to find them very easily at like office supply stores. They're usually sold almost anywhere that sells drafting and architectural supplies, though. The refill leads are pretty easy to find, and it takes time to learn how to not put too much pressure on the painting. If you watched me when I was sketching this, you may have noticed that I break the leads like every 5 minutes or so. I didn't used to, but I've been really heavy-handed lately. It does take practice to get the handle of such a delicate lead, but it is so worth it in the end because you have these really fine lines that don't steer you wrong, and when you erase, you're not having to worry about big smears of lead that you have to work harder to get off your page. Making pretty good progress. We're almost done with this background, though I am going to have to darken this. You may notice that the board is warping again. I don't worry about it too much at this stage because I have a frame for this. It's not warping to the point where I can't fix it just by putting this in a frame. But one thing you can do is when your board is, the paint itself is dry but the board is still soft and weak from the moisture it absorbed, you can very gently bend the board back into place and it will dry flatter and more even. I highly suggest practicing this before you put it into use on a painting. But once you get the hang of it, it's a pretty nice tool for being able to keep your paintings relatively flat without a whole lot of mounting. And again, I work using illustration board, so I already have a fairly sturdy surface to work with. So I'm not worried overly much about getting my boards to stay flat. Yeah, I probably should have used a smaller brush for this, but that's okay. Got a nice bit of texture in there. Have to give my wrist a break once in a while. But we're almost done with the background of this piece, which is pretty nice. Now it's not a fancy background, you know, it doesn't have buildings behind her or things like that, but sometimes you don't need to do a fully realized background. In this case, with the detail work on the frame and this detail on the subject matter, I felt that simple was probably going to be better. Just getting these last bits nice and painted out. You'll notice that I painted with smooth strokes to get the background red in there fairly evenly. It's because I wanted to get my lines to be a bit smoother and more even. But with the other colors on top, I'm still mostly tapping it in. A little bit of brush strokes, but mostly just tapping and letting the pigment do its own thing. Purely because I want it to maintain this really nice texture we have going on. So this area that I left super light, we're going to go back and darken it to match the feel we have going on. This is why it's easier to work light to dark than dark to light, because if you need to change your plans with your background, you can do so fairly swiftly and simply when it comes to darkening things, but lightening things is a much different process and much harder. So working light and darkening as you go, definitely the preferred method. I really love this red. It's such a great color, but I don't want the background to be maroon, so we're adding the purple in and giving it a little bit of a different tone. I have done entire backgrounds in this red because I love it so much. I'm doing the purple everywhere that I want super dark. I'm laying it in really heavy, especially around her hair. I want to have a great big amount of contrast between the values of her hair and the values of the background. Okay, I feel pretty good about where this has gone. Our board is quite wobbly at this point, so we'll have to let this dry. But so far we have the background pretty well laid in. And we get to focus on other places to paint. This is going to be a fun piece when it's done, that's for sure. But for now it needs to dry, so I will end the stream here and hopefully be back, probably not tomorrow as it's Christmas, but the day after, and get some more work done on this. Oh hey Marion, I'm so glad you can hear. Okay, heading off.